Hey Riverland College, good afternoon to you. I promised you a vid, 3 vids a week actually. I'm trying to replicate what I'm doing with my live classes to get you the content that you need so this course works out for you. And I didn't get the one done on Friday because I was spending the entire day making a video for actually teachers at Riverland and all your campuses down there. And it's called The Reluctant Online Teacher, which is me. It's just a really kind of a history of stories about the 2 efforts that I've made trying to teach online. It's like I told administrators down there who asked me to do it, if it inspires even one teacher to rethink what they're doing with technology and online remote learning, it'll certainly have been worth it. I have 3 things for you today. I'm going to offer you a poem by Juan Felipe Herrera, who I hosted a few years ago, and I want to give you a very brief history of freshman composition. I guess I'm feeling historical today, but I'm confident because I got a secret history major. And then I got a pretty good story for you that's going to make some of this rhetorical theory real. I pulled a stunt through the trees here. It's getting to be many, many years ago. That involved 3 sophomore classes. I did something I shouldn't have as a teacher. I designed an assignment, and my intentions were good. I was trying to teach them, and I overdid something. I'll get there in a minute. It's one of my favorite stories. I tell it every single fall. Some stories I tell and then quit telling. I'm always picking up new ones, but this one is it's a standard war story for me. So, and let me be honest to the top. Juan Felipe Herrera, I decided would be the poet that everybody experiences on Friday. So all 3 of my live Zoom classes inhabited this sweet, great-hearted man, and I'll put a poem before you in a second. But you're the ones that inspired me to do this, because last week, the night before, and Thursday night, I sat down and started, I did an entire folder for this class, and I saw some names, like Felipe, man, and I thought to myself, some of these people are from Mexico. And I'm starting to understand that Austin is really diverse. And I think I've already said twice, I have brought major poets, not only to my college, but to Long Prairie Grey Eagle High School. Excuse me. And why did I do that? Because, and I was going to bring a 3rd this spring. Long Prairie Grey Eagle High School, which is northwest of here, about 3.5 hours away from where you are, the town is half Hispanic. It's half Mexican. And the elementary school there is about 60% of that, because they're there for the work, and they're hardworking, and they're working there's a packing plant there, and there's a plant in that town that makes these big trailers, and they're here to dream. So a few years ago, I brought Juan Felipe Herrera when he was the U.S. Poet Laureate to Long Prairie Grey Eagle High School, and then the following year, I brought the Poet Laureate of Los Angeles, Luis J. Rodriguez, the former gangster. And those kids from Mexico, those students were just thrilled, inspired to tears. They just ran up and they wanted to speak in Spanish, and kind of left me out of the loop. Juan Felipe Herrera, who flew off with my charge cord to my iPhone 6. Sometimes poets take your stuff. I just came to love him so much. He hit me with a flying hug in the airport. And he's a $15,000 poet. He came down $5,000 to read for my series. He even canceled the trip to Chile because he heard that I had something going on with Verse Like Water. And after we hugged and got his bag, we were going down the escalator, and he said, "So, how's everybody in Minnesota today?" I said, "Juan Felipe, we're sad. Prince died during the night. They found his body in his Chaska studio." And he went, "Oh, Prince." And well, let's let him just introduce. Let's turn him loose. Here's Juan Felipe Herrera.
My name is Juan Felipe Herrera. This poem is called 5 Directions to My House. 1. Go back to the grain yellow hills with a broken speak of elegance. 2. Walk up to the canvas door, the short bed stretched against the clouds. 3. Beneath the earth, an ant writes with the grace of a governor. 4. Blow, blow, red-tailed hawk, your hidden sleeve, your desert secrets. 5. You are almost there, without a name, without a body. Go now. 6. I said 5. Said 5, like a guitar says 6. I used to play the guitar when I was 16, and I got into the folk song movement and harmonica strapped around my neck, and then I used to play it like Bob Dylan when he first was coming out. And so the guitar is kind of inside this poem somewhere. And red-tailed hawks, I just love birds of that size, and they're so majestic, and little birds too. And that's about it. I just started writing, and I started with the title, 5 Directions to My House, and then I used numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it begins, go back to the green yellow hills. So then I went back and let the poem go, and then I finished it up with something about that guitar. And I was happy because it has 6 lines, and yet there's 5 directions. So I like having a little puzzle in there, and to let you figure it out, and to let me figure it out too. And that's the idea behind poetry. I have to figure it out, and maybe the reader has to figure it out too. And maybe between both of us, the poem can really, really take off. And maybe we didn't figure it out, but we gave the poem a little time of our lives.
All right. So now, before I get to the story, I've got to do a little bit of setup here and review something with you. Now, so far I've convinced you of something that I'm sure seems reasonable to you. Anytime there's any kind of communication going on between human beings, some kind of voice is addressing some kind of audience about some sort of topic or subject. That V, to repeat and review, can stand for a speaker or a writer. The voice, or the audience rather, it could be a reader. It could be someone hearing. And let's just unveil the constituent parts of these appeals, right? We've already talked about ethos, pathos, and logos, which center on the character of the speaker or the voice. And there's another appeal that centers on the the audience. And that is pathos, from which we get the modern word pathetic. It means emotional. Now, the other day when I was going through this with my live Zoom classes, I let my students know I'm not going to give you any training really with pathos. You don't need it. And when I looked at all these little Zoom squares, Brady Bunch style, I said, put your hand in the air if you know how to piss someone off. Well, all the hands went up in the air. So we've already got that down, right? We know how to make the people around us angry. We know how to make them happy. We know how to make them envious. We know how to make them sad. It's relatively simple, so there's no training necessary there. Now, I've got a thing or two to say about logic later on, and that's logos is what centers on the subject. I know enough about logic to be dangerous. I signed up for a logic class once, and I quit it, I think, probably about a week in, and went down the hallway and took a course on the French Revolution from Stanley and Zerda. It started smelling like math, and I ran as from a burning building. So we have these appeals, and there's another thing that's pretty important too, which is, if you look at that word kairos at the center of the triangle, I put it there because kairos informs all rhetorical action. Kairos is an ambiguous Greek word that I read somewhere has 36 different iterations in Greek, which is an impossible language. A kairos, o kairos, a kairos. And it occurs for the first time in Hesiod, in his Works and Days, which my mythologist read up in Brainerd. In that famous poem, written about 8 centuries before Christ, Hesiod says, observe time and proper measure in all things. So what that means is, when you go to act with language, you've got to think, is this the time to do this? And then also you have to think, is this the right degree? And I'll use the same example I used Friday. For the men in this class, someday you're going to probably propose to a woman, and I hope you do that and be courageous and get married and start up a family as young as you possibly can. Do it. But when you do it, you're going to weigh the kairos of it. Every man in the world who's ever proposed has got to figure out the perfect time to do it. My son couldn't figure it out when he proposed to Elizabeth Flaherty, who he married last year. I gave him a pretty good idea. It was decent. I said, do this. Put your big fat diamond ring, I'll tell you the story of that on another day, in the Bluebird house. We'll put it up on the hill, and the big oak tree, the big 400-year-old oak that overlooks our lake and our lives. Put the diamond ring in there, and then tell her you're going to you want to show her some baby bluebirds. Except when you open up the little hatch, your ring will be in there, not baby bluebirds. It worked. That was the kairos, the kairotic moment, and then they started up a story. So here's the thing regarding Little Debbie. Well, I gotta tell the Little Debbie snack cake story. Okay, I asked my students the other day, how many of you would admit to enjoying Little Debbie snack cakes? And a few hands went in the air. It was mostly dudes. And I asked one of them. I said, Dustin, what's your favorite Little Debbie snack cake? He instantly said zebra cakes. All right. And another young man wearing camo so he could blend in, he said, I like them all. I eat them all. And I said, okay, you know they're comprised of petroleum products, right? Are you aware of that? Oh, they didn't care, did they? Oh, they just want a snack cake. But here's my story. When I put what I just put before you, and have been building for some days, we're not done with this. When I put that triangle before 55 sophomores way back in 1990, I remember one day getting in my Volkswagen Super Beetle, 1973, one of the most magnificent automobiles I've ever had. I got in the truck and the car, and I thought, I felt like I was doing a card trick in front of a dog all day. Another way of thinking of it is, it's too abstract. It's too theoretical. And rhetoric can be that. Rhetoric can be abstract and theoretical until you tie the theory of it all, the theories of rhetoric, to the down and dirty lives that we live in. And I was driving home, and my young teacher head, my kid brain told me, okay, let's design an assignment to try to make it real. I concluded, hey, it's school. And in school, we mainly write for teachers. So the next day I went into the class and I said, okay, here's what I want you to do. On Friday, we're going to go to the computer lab. I'm going to give you 1 week to figure this out. And when we get to the computer lab, green screen, IBM XTs, no internet, floppy drives, just junk compared to what we have now. I said, when you get to the computer lab, I want you to bring the address of a Fortune 500 company whose products you have experience with. And I'm going to give you 20 minutes to write either a letter of complaint or a letter of compliment to the company. And I'm going to send them. And Lori Funenstein, the secretary, I'll just put it on the school's dime. And they did what I asked, and they all came to do the assignment. Clacking away. I missed that old keyboard, that IBM. That thing had pop. I'm not really paying attention. I got a lot of stuff on my mind, and they start working away. And this kid named Scott Safer said to me, he was in the corner, he said, Johnson. Hey, Johnson, Mr. Johnson. Actually, back then I was Mr. J. I've had several identities. Mr. J, do we have to tell the truth? You all know what I should have said right then. I should have said, hey, Scott, absolutely. Why would you do anything but tell the truth? Don't lie. I didn't do that. You know what? I also didn't say no. I didn't say yes or no in a clear way. I did the last thing you're supposed to be when you got a bunch of 15-year-olds in the room. I was ambiguous. And I was just not too far out of grad school either. And grad school teaches you how to write and speak in a way that no one will understand for years. It's the point of it. Part of it. So I said to Scott, Scott, I think you should tell the truth to the extent that your ethos is comfortable with it. What does that mean? How about nothing? This is what I think happened next. This could be apocryphal. It could be imagining this, but you all know how the telephone game works, right? I'm pretty sure that the next kid to Scott said, "What did Johnson say?" And Scott, I think, said something like, "Well, he just said something about ethos and comfort." Computers were lining the room, right? Big open space in the middle for me to walk around and look over their shoulders. I'm pretty sure that somewhere in the middle of that room, some kid said, "What did Johnson say?" And that kid, I think, said, I don't know, something about Egos and waffles and maple syrup and breakfast. I'm almost certain that when the last kid turned to the second of the last kid in the telephone game transmission of this distorted message, I'm pretty sure that second of the last kid said, "John, Mr. J says we can lie. Let's lie. Let's lie all day long." And they did. Typing away. I gathered up every letter, put them in the envelopes. I didn't want that glue taste in my mouth, so I had them lick them, of course. I didn't read a one of them. Not a single letter. I just put them in the mail. Get them out. And I didn't even think anything about it after that. Because with teachings, the life of a teacher is full speed ahead. You teach a class, you're on to the next thing. We're always on to the next thing. No one's more obsessed with the future. No one's got their face more smushed up against that panel of what's next than a high school English teacher. And so I didn't see the trouble coming, but the following week, not that long ago, or not that long after that, this kid from West Africa came up to me. Mufaro was his name. And he had a Hershey's Kiss the size of his head. Okay? It was just gigantic. I went, "Mufaro, how'd you get that?" And he told me with this beautiful accent that he had written the Hershey's company and told them that he'd got a chocolate bar that was all chalky and stale, and he didn't like it. So they sent him this huge, he's eating it still. And because my inner sophist was kind of at the surface, and also because I didn't want to be responsible for what they did or wrote or thought, I was so foolish. I didn't realize the trouble that was coming. Scott Safer came in pretty quickly after that, the kid that started the whole thing, with a whole case of pop from Burnix Pepsi in St. Cloud. He had told this whopper of a story about how he was a factory worker and he'd worked 2 8-hour shifts and he only had 50 cents in his pocket. That's what pop cost back then. And he put it into a machine and he got a can of air, right? Like that could have happened even. Like it could have come through the machine. They sent him a whole case of pop. I'm like, this is great. Let's all have pop. And we did. And I think that where I started getting, kids were writing soccer companies and getting free cleats and without even giving the shoes, the sales slip. Mexican kids were getting soccer balls left and right. I think I started getting a little bit nervous when a kid named Pat Ingerbitsen, who's a fellow guitar player, I call him Guitar Brother, he wrote not one guitar string company, he wrote like 10, 15. He just kept changing the address and printing out new letters with his dot matrix printer. And that's when it started, really. I go, wait a minute. Because every day, it seemed like he had a new set of strings. Johnson, Diodario, Fender, GHS Boomer. And he was got a lifetime supply of 10-gauge electric guitar strings. Okay, so let me show you a picture here. This is Deb Keemer and her husband Jay. It's way in the future. They fell in love during sophomore year. From her face, Jay Bemler could not tear his gaze. And you'll never hear me say the phrase puppy love or young love. I believe love can happen early. Check out Romeo and Juliet, and they're fine now. They're great. She's a professor of chemistry, and Jay's a medical doctor, and they were two of the finest kids in the school. But I didn't see the inner PhD exactly in either of them. But Deb Keemer, she told the biggest whopper of them all. She wrote the Little Debbie Snack Cake Company, which incidentally is based in McGee. The McGee Snack Cake Company. It comes out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's what it's called, the McGee Baking Company. She writes the McGee Baking Company and she tells them, you know what? We love your snack cakes at our house. We got all kinds of them. She kind of, it was like she described their pantry. It was like the Library of Congress of Little Debbie snack cakes. And she told them that she was busy one night in the kitchen and cooking, and her little daughter Deb came flying in wanting a snack. And she opened up a snack cake and gave it to her without noticing that there was a deadly toxic mold on the snack cake, as if that could happen. And she reported further in the letter that my daughter Deb convulsed in a seizure, and we had to take her to the St. Cloud Hospital. And by the way, my husband and I are thinking about suing your company. We're considering litigation. Okay, this is bad. This is like prison bad, okay? Because what happened next was the McGee Snack Cake Company dispatched, without calling or writing, they just sent a representative from Maple Grove, Minnesota up to St. Cloud. That's about an hour's drive. And that guy, I always imagine him with sunglasses and an attaché case, right? He walked up the sidewalk, knocked on the door, where the real Mrs. Keemer answered, said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "I am so sorry about the snack cake and your daughter being ill. I represent the McGee Snack Cake Company, Little Debbie products, and I'd be very grateful if you could let me come into your living room and we can sit down and talk about ways to generously compensate you so we can just keep this out of the courts." There I was, back in the principal's office again, door closed, where I've been since 1966, getting yelled at. I overdid something. I overtaught it. The students overlearned it. The company overreacted. And several fires were in front of me that I had to put out. Students were getting the wrong idea. They're like, "Johnson's awesome. Mr. J is awesome. He's teaching us about rhetoric. And rhetoric is how we're going to get free stuff from the world." So you can see what happened. They invented new ethoses, if there is such a word. They pounded on a little button called guilt on the audience. And they took logic and just threw it out in the snow, where it lay whimpering for weeks. They just look, that was their attitude. You sold me this, I don't like it, what are you going to do about it? And I could flesh details out in the story. Of course, I wrote every guitar string company that Pat Ingerbitsen did. And I said, "These are the finest guitar strings I've ever played in my life. I cannot believe how great my Fender Stratocaster feels." How many sets of strings did I get back? 0. I got back letters that said, "Thank you, keep buying our strings." But it's the complainers of the world, that old squeaky wheel trope, that aphorism. That's who got all the attention. So you must see now that we're really truly playing with fire here, boys and girls, and you must see that there's a right rhetoric, a wrong rhetoric, and a gray rhetoric, and I should not have behaved in that way as a teacher, but at least I got the story, and I hope you liked it. Let me get editing this, and then I'll get going on that grilled salmon for my wife. I can make a hollandaise sauce. I'm not the smartest teacher at Central Lakes College, my main gig, but without a doubt, I'm the best cook. And there isn't a professor there that can cook the way I can. It's one of the things I'm actually really good at. So, what was I going to say? I don't think I have any. I guess I'm just kind of petering out again. Hey, I'll see you on Monday, and I'll go over to St. John's and jack the Wi-Fi so you have this up today, Sunday afternoon. Be safe and well, Riverland.